Our gospel lesson this morning is taken from the gospel according to Matthew, chapter 22, and verses 15 through 22. Listen to what the Spirit might speak into your life in this probably familiar reading from the Gospel of Matthew. Then the Pharisees went and plotted to entrap Jesus in what he said. So they sent their disciples to him, along with the Herodians, saying, "Teacher, we know that you are sincere and teach the way of God in accordance with the truth, and show deference to no one, for you do not regard people with partiality. Tell us this then, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not?" But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, "Why are you putting me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin used to pay the tax." And they brought him a denarius. Then he said to them, "Whose head is this, and whose title?" And they answered, "The emperor's." Then he said to them, "Give therefore to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and give to God the things that are God's." When they heard this, they were amazed, and they left him and went away. May God bless to our understanding this reading from God's holy word, and to God's name be glory and praise. Moses, in the reading that we heard from the lectern, not from the pulpit, Moses is begging to know God. Moses is basically saying, just show me. I just want to see, just once. I want to see that you're out there. I want to know you. And I think every human being who has ever lived has done the exact same thing at some point in their lives, in their own way, in their own words. We strive to know God, even those of us who do not believe in God. We're reaching for the meaning and the purpose, the joy, the reality that God is. And sometimes we reach at it with all the wrong things, with whatever is at our disposal. Each and every person you have ever known and will ever know is doing what Moses is doing here. How do you go about it? How do you reach for God? What does your quest look like? Does it ever occur to you that it's a holy discontent that drives you, a sacred longing which causes you to chase after God's beauty, God's wholeness, God's life, sometimes in the least godly of things? We want to know God, but our knowledge is never complete. Who do you know best in all this world? I guess it's whom. Whom do you know best in all the world? Is there a person you know better than anybody else? And does that person know you? Who do you know best? And who knows you best? Is it the same person? Maybe not. How much do we really know the people we know? There's so much that we even fail to know about ourselves. I mean, where do your people come from? Do you know? What drove them here to this place? How did they get here? What was their diet? What was their faith? Can you speak the language they spoke? I bet only a few people in the room can say that they do. You're intimately connected with them by your DNA and your habits and your culture, but do you know them? People you probably did know or do know. Your parents, your grandparents. How well do you know them? I mean, you didn't know them when they were children, and so you missed out on a whole big part of their life. You didn't know them when they were young, the cute things they said. You'll never know fully who they were at work or with certain other people. We don't know. I tried to give my own parents one of those journals that has questions in it for them to answer about their lives. They're kind of nice. It provides the questions. All you have to do is answer them. I thought this would be a good memento for their 5 adult children and for all their grandchildren. This journal, just answering questions about their lives in their own handwriting. I thought it would be beautiful. They wanted none of it. They had no interest whatsoever. And those stories will be lost if I don't get them somehow. Between my siblings and me, 5 of us got 10 different parents, if you know what I mean. For for we each experienced the two of them very differently. I did not have the same father or the same mother as my sister had, and I am amazed at the parents my youngest brother got. So easygoing, so affectionate. He got to see them at a different stage in their lives, and he brought out in them something quite different from what I, the middle child, brought out. And I only have 2 children, but I've managed to give them both 2 very different and unique knots for some therapist to untangle. Someday. They cannot know me fully, and they must not. In some way or another, they partially come from me, but as well as I know them, they are a mystery to me. They don't entirely belong to me. They belong to the mystery that is God. Now, let's talk about Moses, because there is one mysterious fellow. Let's talk about Moses, because we do not often talk about Moses in this church. Moses is not known for his warmth or his welcoming personality. He would never make it as a religious leader in America today. For one thing, he has committed at least one murder. And when you're a religious leader and you commit murder, you really got to hide it. And in the story of the golden calf, he did cause the earth to open up and swallow a bunch of his own people. In Britain, they've got a term, Moses on a motorbike, and it refers to a wrathful person, an angry person. The narrator of Exodus, which was not Moses himself, contrary to some traditions, the narrator does not do much to endear Moses to us. Moses is driven. Moses is hard. Moses is forceful. Moses has a job. He's got to get all these people from one place to another across the desert. But in today's reading, we see grim old Moses in a place where each of us has been, maybe as recently as this day. We see Moses in a different light, in a moment of lostness, passion, sorrow maybe. He says to God in prayer a thing that in our own way we have all said. Just let me see that you're there. Give me a sign. Give me something. Give me some guidance. Let me see your face. Let me see your glory. I can't do this job unless I know you're with me. Let me see you. We have all reached for the thing that Moses is reaching for here. In a moment of panic or crisis or loneliness or even boredom, we have reached for this, the very face of God. Just let me know. Let me know you're there. Though we may not have known it at the time, that we were reaching for God's face, we were indeed. Isn't all of our human striving and flailing just a grasp at the mystery that we call God? Aren't all of our best endeavors, and maybe our worst ones, just a reaching for God, for the eternal, for the divine? Music, art, religion, war, perhaps? Cross-stitching, quilting, cooking, fishing, hiking, video games? Aren't we all reaching out to touch the rush, the adventure, the comfort, the meaning, the peace, the joy that we have named God? And in many of these things, God does reveal God's self to us, partially, fleetingly, as if in the cleft of a rock. Not to belabor the story of Moses, I know I haven't talked about Moses in a long time, and here I am dwelling on his story. But Moses had a tent. And Moses always cast his tent just beyond the camp of the Israelites as they traveled through the wilderness, just far enough that he wouldn't have to hear all their noise and all their clamor. And he would go out to that tent whenever he wanted to pray, and he would speak alone to God in the tent. I like that because I have spoken to God in many a tent. And in this particular reading, Moses has gone out to his tent and sort of talked God down off a ledge. And if you think that sounds disrespectful, then I would invite you to read the book of Exodus. Because God and Moses squabble in Exodus. They bicker. I sometimes say, and you've heard me say, that they sometimes sound like Frank and Estelle Costanza from Seinfeld. And in a rare moment of real vulnerability, Moses says to God, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know how to do this. You've given me a really big job, and I feel like I'm alone. Once at a burning bush, I felt your love and I felt your nearness. Once on a mountaintop, I felt your grace. I felt your presence. But that's been a long time ago. I haven't felt it recently. Where are you? Are you even there? I used to get goosebumps when I was with you, but that was a long time ago. Are you still with me or not? Please just let me see you, just once. If I could see you just one time, I would turn away contented and bear whatever life brings me. For I would know that whatever it is, you're there. And you're in control. And I'm okay. Let me see you. And at this, as often happens in the book of Exodus, at this, God's temper softens, and God's wise and wistful answer is parental. It's paternal. I can't do that. I wish I could do that for you. And of course, I'm putting words in God's mouth to paraphrase that answer, but we always put words in God's mouth, I suppose. You don't have eyes for such a thing. You can't really see me entirely. It takes more than just eyes to see what I am, to know what I am. It takes senses you don't have. You can see parts of me. You can know me imperfectly, but never perfectly. And then God goes on to say, this is going to get windy. This is going to get wild. So let's leave the tent, and you go stand in the hollow of that rock, and I will let you see just a glimmer of who and what I am. And that is what we get in this life. We get glimmers of God, visions, echoes, traces, shadows. And these are enough. What glimmers of God have you seen in your life? What echoes, what traces, what shadows? Maybe even this past week. What traces of God? It's our imperfect knowledge of God that makes these lives of ours joyful and full. Everyone yearns for God, even if they would never name those yearnings holy, and even if those yearnings sometimes are indeed not holy. Our souls don't always know that it is God that they are seeking, but God's humility is such that even the atheist can know God in the innocent joys of living. Sometimes that quest goes very dark. Sometimes we get lost in that quest, and we chase after God in ways that lead us further and further from the wholeness and the goodness that God is. The quest can lead us to some dark places: addiction, fear, violence, greed. But even when we're stuck in those places, we are reaching for God's face. Like a blade of grass that I saw once growing in a cellar, reaching for whatever thin ray of light might sometimes come across the cellar floor. It was not my cellar. We are made to seek the light. Like all living things, most living things, we are made to seek the light. We never get to see it in all its fullness. God's face we cannot see. At times we see God's back, and that's enough. We staid mainline Protestants often treat knowing God as a brain thing, a cerebral thing. We used to have our children memorize the catechism, and probably some of you underwent that. And to be ordained, I had to produce a statement of beliefs that I would read in front of the whole presbytery. And then they got to ask me questions about what I believed, about my theology, and then vote on whether to ordain me. to a job that I had just spent thousands and thousands of dollars training for. No one ever asked me about my prayer life. No one ever asked me about my sacramental life. No one ever asked me about my spiritual practices. They wanted to know what I believed. I have told you this story many times, and it bears repeating. A Catholic friend said to me long ago that if a Presbyterian died and arrived at a place with two doors, one of which was marked heaven, and the other of which was marked lecture about heaven, the Presbyterians are going to go for the lecture first. And look at the words engraved on the ends of your pews. Whatever pew you're sitting on, unless you're sitting at home, don't look for them there. They say worship, service, knowledge. We love knowledge. We love to know. Knowledge is very important to us. You will not find the word mystery in many churches. Knowledge. I am glad for a faith that has room for the intellect. But it's our hearts that keep us coming back, isn't it? It's our hearts that bring us to this place and that bring us back for more, not our heads. Knowledge. No matter how much you know about this thing or that thing, it's only a fraction of all that there is to be known. Your knowledge of another person is imperfect, even if you've listened to their snoring for 60 years. Like Moses, we all long to know God, whom we can know with our heads, with our logic and with our reason, and with our hearts, with our feelings and our intuition, and whom we can know in other ways too. Our bodies, with motion and with music and with our five senses, and surely in other ways. But no matter how much we know about God, we want to know more. And there's more to be known. Just show me your face. Let me see you. Let me know you're out there. To which God replies, I wish I could, but I can't. But take refuge in the cleft of the rock, and I'll show you as much of me as you can bear for today. And then tomorrow, I'll show you the same. As much of me as you can take for that day. And that is enough. And so, what are we to do with this vision of Moses in his prayer tent, out in the wilderness on the edge of the buzzing camp of the Israelites? A few things. First of all, this story about Moses should teach us humility about our faith and our knowledge of all things eternal. There are many in this world who've decided that they know everything there is to know about God and faith. But I tell you, curiosity and doubt have done less damage in this world than hard certainty. Let us be humble with our knowledge about God, always willing to learn from anyone, even the most unlikely of sources. Let us never assume that there is anyone who cannot teach us something about God. Let us remember, in fact, that all of our seeking and all of our longing and all of our striving is a holy thing because, in a way, we're reaching for God. We're searching for God. Regardless of what we think, we're searching for. In every quest, in every search, in every bid for attention or affection or accomplishment or gratification, we are reaching for the face of God. We are chasing, sometimes misguidedly, after the wholeness and the joy that God is. We all long to know God, and we seek to fulfill that longing at all times. Let's remember, too, that just as all the plants direct themselves toward the light and seek the light, all people seek the light. And some of them do it, and some of us do it, I should say, in some healthy ways, and some of us do it in some wildly unhealthy ways. But we're all searching for the same thing. I would say most of us do a little bit of both, healthy and unhealthy. But because we're all searching for the same thing, we owe each other a lot of patience and a lot of love, because we seek the same holy presence in our varied ways. And you know what Jesus said? Jesus said, ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. We cannot know it all. We cannot see God's face, but we can know enough for this hour. We can see enough for today. Amen.